Hello, this video is going to be the Unit 3 study guide, okay? Now this is the study guide, and of course you can't read it, but it should be in the handouts and more box or section. You'll see it on the left-hand side on Blackboard. You click on handouts and more, and it'll say Unit 3, the one we just finished, the study guide. And I'm going to go over it with you, okay? And this is really what the test is going to be based on, okay? So here we go. I'll answer the questions. First question says, what research method is best for studying a large group of people? Now, I know, we can't have more than 10 people because of coronavirus. But assuming we did have a large group of people, okay? You know, like say we wanted to study people at a football game, or we wanted to study even people in a whole town, what would be the best method? And the answer is survey research. Remember survey, we send out questionnaires and we get them back, and that's good for studying a large group of people. What is a random sample? A random sample is a sample that is representative of the group being studied. We said in class that in a random sample, everyone in the group has an equal chance of being chosen. For instance, like if you're watching a TV program in El Paso and they say, Channel 9 wants you to call this number or that number to give your opinion, would that be a random sample? Think about it now. Did everybody in El Paso have a chance to call in? Was everybody watching Channel 9? No. Random sample is when everybody in the group has an equal chance of being chosen, even though, of course, as we said in class, not everybody will be chosen in terms of that. Next question. What are objective and subjective terms? So if I tell you that I like Artavino's pizza the best, and you say you like Peter Piper, right? We talked about that in class, Peter Piper, what have you. Is that objective or subjective? That's subjective. It's like an opinion. Think of subjective as an opinion. So a subjective term is an opinion, and we have to be careful because sometimes researchers kind of trick us to thinking that it's really a fact. If I'm measuring happiness, happiness is not a fact, it's an opinion. Do you feel happy? Oh, coronavirus, you probably don't feel happy right now. Maybe in a couple of months we will. Happiness is an opinion. If you ask me if I'm happy, I might say yes, but it's my opinion about how I feel. So subjective is an opinion type thing, like what is happiness? We're going to see, for instance, like the term pornography. What is pornography is an opinion in terms of that. What is the best pizza in El Paso? That's opinion in terms of what we might say. If we say this person is lazy, that's an opinion, because it depends on how we define laziness. Objective terms are what you and I think of as data or facts, like the number of babies born in El Paso last year, the number of murders, the number of car thefts. These usually are easily measured and agreed upon. That's an objective term. Next question. The Meese Commission. Now, when you look at the videos, one of the videos is on pornography and violence, and it looks at a study done by the Meese Commission. Remember, that's the one where I held up that piece of paper, and I hope you saw it. It said QV, remember, questionnaire. They showed them a film with either violence or pornography and violence, and then they gave them the questionnaire again. And remember, the Meese Commission used the study to try to prove that pornography led to violence. But remember, that study didn't say that. The study actually said that when you looked at all of the results, pornography did not contribute to violence in terms of the media. Now, what we mean is the attitude in that study. What contributed was the violence in the media. So the key thing in that study that Meese cited was that it wasn't the pornography, it was the violence. Now, get back to the original question. Was the Meese Commission on pornography biased? Yeah. Why was it biased? Because the Meese Commission, as I told you in that video, didn't tell you everything. It just told you the part of that study that made it look like pornography contributed to violence. It didn't tell you the part of the study in which the study proved that no, it was not the pornography in the video, but it was the violence in the video that caused the attitudes of the male to change in the direction of more violent attitudes toward women. What is replication? What is scrutiny? Replication is simple. The word replicate, think about what it means. It means to repeat. We repeat studies to see if we get the same results. Scrutiny. Scrutiny, I gave you examples of that in looking at the study of chimpanzees and marijuana. Scrutiny is when you examine the study closely to see if the study is accurate, to see if there are any flaws. And you saw that in that study on the chimpanzees and marijuana, where remember they gave them this dose and it was like 400, equivalent to 400 marijuana joints a day. And they found that really when you examined it closely, the the study was flawed and that you really couldn't say that marijuana caused brain damage, which is what they were trying to prove. Okay, let's look at sponsor the research. Who pays for it? What organization or group pays for it? We need to know that, because sometimes the group sponsoring it wants a certain result, would favor a certain result. We call that self-interest, and that's where we run into conflict of interest. For instance, if I'm a drug company and I'm paying for research to see if my drug's any good, you know what? I would like the research to say my drug is good. That creates a conflict of interest because I'm paying for research and I'm hoping the research gives one result. I got to be careful. In the past, it has been alleged that oil, gas, and coal companies sponsored research that was directed in kind of making us believe that global warming either wasn't a problem or it wasn't occurring. And if these allegations are true, we see again, sponsor the research. The oil, gas, and coal companies was hoping for a certain result, and they were trying to get researchers to come up with a result that made it seem as if maybe global warming wasn't that true, if these allegations are true about them. Let's look at the next one. The next one says, correlation does not prove causation, or we call this spurious correlation. On rainy days, more women get pregnant. Now, do women have to go around with a special umbrella because they're going to get pregnant, sperm's falling on them? No. It's not the rain. On rainy days, more women get pregnant, not because of the rain, but because of the fact that people stay inside and maybe they're bored and they get warm, they get too warm, and the bambino shows up 9 months later. This is an example of a spurious correlation, or that correlation does not prove causation. Sure, rainy days, 9 months later, they did this study in Seattle, there was an increase in birth rates. But it had nothing to do with the rain itself. It was more the fact that people stayed inside. And the example I used on the video was that the false claim, the spurious correlation that marijuana leads to heroin addiction. That is not true. Just because a person used marijuana and then used heroin does not mean one led to the other. If we talk about secondary analysis, that's the kind of work you will do as a student, where you essentially use research that was already done in preparing a paper that you might be doing for a class. In other words, if I asked you to look up the death penalty, does it prevent crime, you are doing secondary analysis. Survey research, we talked about that a bit, use of questionnaires and or interviews. Single blind and double blind. Single blind is when the subjects don't know the intended results of the research. Double blind is when neither the subjects nor the researcher. This is to prevent the Tester-Hawthorne effect, where the subjects produce the desired results. In class, you remember I talked about this place where they made electrical appliances or light bulbs, and the workers kept producing more and more because they thought the changes were supposed to result in them producing more and more. It's sort of almost like the placebo effect. It's one way to look at the test effect. What research method studies the relationship between cause and effect under controlled conditions? Experiment does, especially laboratory. What is the best method for studying a group that doesn't want to be studied? It would be an observational research, either non-participant or participant, where you either watch the group or maybe you try and join the group. Of course, in this case, you wouldn't be able to tell them you were a sociologist if they did not want to be studied. The next question says, what's the best method for analyzing television ads? And that would be content analysis is the best method for that. How can sociologists determine if somebody's lying on a questionnaire? Remember we said in class you can either ask the same question different ways. Remember that? Remember we had the lie scale where we ask you a question that's like, have you ever stolen anything or taken something that wasn't yours? Have you ever lied or done something you regretted? So there's various ways that we can do it. Ask the same question different ways, or ask questions in which people should give you a certain answer because everybody's done that. Okay, next question. Test effect, Hawthorne effect, we talked about. That's when the subjects, because they know the results, end up producing the desired results. It says here to describe the field experiment on how police should handle domestic violence calls, the Minneapolis domestic violence study. What were the results and what were two possible problems? Remember in that study, the police chose between either arresting the person, separating them, or counseling. The results indicated that arrest was very, very effective because it reduced the number of repeat calls to that home. But we raised two questions. One, was the counseling offered by the police very good? Because most police officers are not thoroughly trained counselors. And second, remember we talked about maybe arrest masking or hiding further violence because maybe the women were afraid to report any more domestic violence or afraid to even tell the researchers when they called them to ask had there been any more violence. Okay, next question was the tea room trade study. Remember, that was a study where the guy spied on the gay men in the bathroom, remember? Then was able to get their home addresses from the Department of Transportation in Missouri, then went there and pretended to be doing a mental health study to find out more info about these guys. And remember, he found out that a large majority of these guys were married men who'd been married for many years and had children and were macho and they were homophobic. And this was the result of the study. But the problem was that he got fired because the sociologist in his department said, look, you know what? You shouldn't have deceived us and deceived the people that you were interviewing, making them think that, you did a mental health study when really you were trying to get more info on these men that you have been watching have sex in this bathroom. So that was the tea room trade study. The difference between a field and a laboratory experiment. Field experiments done more in a natural setting, sort of like the bumper sticker experiment or the Minneapolis domestic violence study. And the laboratory is more highly controlled. Remember the prison study, Zimbardo, that we talked about in class. What's the difference between non-participant, participant observation? If you don't know that one, you're in trouble. Non-participant, you observe the group, you don't join. Participant, you join the group. Why is experimental research not used very often by sociologists? It's because we often find that we can't be certain that these results under these control conditions can really reflect real life. And in other words, in real life, we may not get the same results. Like in the laboratory study that I mentioned, the Zimbardo one on prison, I said, what happened if we had real ex-convicts in there and students guarding them? Would we have gotten different results? Rather than having students guard students, it would have been different maybe if we'd had real convicts. What if we'd had a racial mix? We might have got different results. So therefore, experimental research is not used very often because its results may not really reflect what happens in real life. Last question, the bumper sticker study. The bumper sticker study was the study in California where they put on the Black Power bumper sticker, Black Panthers, I think it was Black Panthers, bumper sticker on the car and found that these people, the students who had not gotten tickets, were getting pulled over all the time because they had put this bumper sticker on their car. And the conclusion was that yes, there is bias among police because obviously the Black Panther movement back then probably was not seen favorably by police. And when the students who had not gotten tickets in the entire previous year put it on their car, guess what happened? They started getting tickets. Now that study, by the way, is in your OER readings. Now, as of this point, if you're listening to this video, I'm looking at having the test on April the 8th, but I will update you on that and provide more info. And I hope that all of you are safe. Take care. We'll talk again later, or I'll talk and you can listen. Or if you raise your hand, I can't see it, but take care, okay? Bye.